Welcome back to the Dimension Approach. My name is Jeff Blanton. Thanks for listening. This episode, we're continuing our discussion of monads, dyads, and triads. Lance talks a bit about kind of dyads and their relation to trauma, kind of how the Dimension Approach works with trauma in the context of monads, dyads, and triads. It's kind of a game of 3-card Monty that we play with ourselves, is one way of thinking about it. Also to get into an experiential of kind of a triad, of the triad of presence, of the thing being observed, the observer, and the presence when both of those are held together. It's kind of a cool experiential. I hope you enjoy. Any feedback, just send it back to us at dimensionapproachmedia@gmail.com. Again, as we look to wrap up season 2, just send any questions too, things you've wondered about, things you'd like to hear about. And we'd love to answer those. Again, thanks for listening. Hope you enjoy.
So with trauma, it's the same thing. Any kind of trauma. The mind is faced with some terrible experience that it can't handle, and it thinks it is too great of a loss, whatever the trauma is. The mind says, I cannot accept this. And to heal trauma, you have to accept it. And it's this strange thing, because with trauma, the mind thinks a certain thing is going to happen. Let's say the mind thinks you're going to die, and you can't just accept that and stay present with it, so you split. But then you don't die. So now, even if it was 50 years ago, you're looking at that experience, you start to heal the split, you start to get back in touch with the energy of that experience. And then what does your mind have to do? It's like you still have to accept dying. And it's like, yeah, but I didn't die, and I know that now. And so I know now that it's just going to hurt, or I just thought I was going to die, but I really didn't. And it's like, yeah, well, that part of your mind that's caught in the trauma can't hear that.
Right.
And so then what I do is I consciously focus on the part of their mind that does know, and simultaneously focus on the part of their mind that doesn't.
Yeah.
And then act as a bridge so that split in their mind can start to come together. Because just to go to the part of the mind that's stuck in the trauma and do it from there isn't doable.
Mm.
That part of the mind doesn't even know that's like the thing to do. I remember when I first started to see that, I was doing some stuff with my nose. One time I got my nose broken, and it got pushed 1.5 inches to the side.
Oh my gosh.
I had to get plastic surgery on it and stuff. So of course there's energetic and tensegral issues from that, right? So I was working on it, and I was trying to work on it energetically, and I'm sitting there sort of doing the, just like I was saying with yoga, it's like I became aware that my mind is bearing down in this. I'm not going to let my nose get broken. I'm not going to lose my nose. I'm not going to have my face be forever deformed. Like that's what this part of my mind, of course, went into at the time it happened, right?
Yeah.
Which happens in a flash, right? But boom, it's like, of course, the mind kicks into a defensive against that. And it was
got hit in the face.
Yeah, right. And so it's traumatic, meaning my mind I didn't stay present and feel that fist hit my nose, and then, feel my nose start migrating towards my ear and watch with an open mind to see just how deformed was my face going to get.
Right.
It was like, my mind was like, I'm fucking out of here. Right. And so boom, it split. So now 20 years later, 30 years later, I'm working on my nose. And of course, with surgery and stuff, they put it back in the middle and all this, but there's all this energetic contraction. And so again, I'm feeling into it, and I'm working with it, and I'm doing that yoga thing where I start to notice that part of my mind that's just bearing down while simultaneously I'm trying to get the energies to change. Became aware of, it's that part of my mind that's bearing down that has to change. The energies have to move in that direction. And it's like, well, what does that mean? Well, that means that I got to allow this experience as if this wasn't getting fixed. I have to allow the energy to move in the direction of this is happening. And what happened, I immediately felt grief. It was like, oh my God, my face is being destroyed, to whatever extent and whatever that meant in my head. And it was like, I've been defending against that feeling for decades. And then of course I could just barely touch it with my attention, but it was like, oh shit, I saw it,
Yeah.
But it was like, oh, that was a key for getting huge change in my overall structure, because I got my nose and the energies around my face to change a lot. And then it was also huge because it was like, oh, now I started seeing that in clients.
Wow.
And so it's this strange thing to process something that you actually know didn't even happen. Meaning, it's like my nose did get broken, but it didn't mean I'll never look the same again, or it didn't mean...
Right, but that fear is still there.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so then I went back, and it's like I've had 4 different bone breaks in my right arm, and it was like I'd started feeling it in my arm in that way, and it was like, okay, yep, I could find the place where it's like, all right, how do I sit with my arms being broken, and now my arm's just I'm losing my arm, or my arm will never function again, or right, because like that's how the mind experiences it in the moment.
Right, and that's what gets shut off.
Yeah. And again, you can't go all the way into just that part of the mind. That's too overwhelming. It's this thing of, can I stay?
Can you titrate it?
Yeah, right. And can I stay present in the part of me that knows it's not happening right now, and simultaneously get in touch with the part of my mind that thinks it is?
Yeah.
Your ego can't do that. It requires a conscious mind perspective to do that.
Because like grief is like just sits on your chest, like so heavy.
And then the dimension approach thing is actually someone else's conscious mind seeing them both has the same effect.
It's fucking crazy.
So I started doing that, and then physical ailments that people had, in the same way it did in my body, there started being change from something that they've been suffering with for 40 years. And it was like, well, that's actually because of when you broke your leg when you were 5 years old. Now you're 60. But it's like, but when I, would hold my attention in that way, the split healed, the energies were able to move, and then their body shifted, and now suddenly their ankle could move in a way, or their knee could move in a way that, oh my God, now they can run again, even though for 20 years they couldn't.
Yeah.
And it just seems like, a miracle or whatever, but it's these mechanisms.
Again, it is miraculous to accept grief. Like we don't want to do that.
Yeah, right. It's not rational.
Yeah.
Because to accept grief is to accept death.
Yeah.
Ultimately, right?
Which is why you want to titrate it.
Right. It's death of what you thought was the one.
Over and over and over again. I feel like you just gave away the sauce. That's like the Pepsi recipe showing up on the internet right there. Because I think the reason that you bring a conscious attention to that split works the same way that it would for that person bringing conscious attention to that split. I guess there's 2 things going on. 1, that conscious attention is coming from the same ultimate source. 2, there's a way in which it starts to bring their conscious attention to it, knowingly or unknowingly, as well.
Right. Yeah, well put.
And that's what is so hard, and like what for me is so hard anyway, about the monad dyad piece, is that on a certain level, we're all a monad. And the human condition is to live as a dyad, at least a dyad.
Yep.
A multiplad. The frenzied hunt for union is the self-defeating cycle, and not accepting the dual nature of our existence.
In Christianity, the Holy Trinity is about this, and this strange paradox that Jesus is saying, I'm the one. And it's like, wait, he keeps saying he's the one.
Wait a second.
Yeah. He's saying he's the one. He's also saying he's God. He's also saying, I'm the Son of God. And then what's this third thing called the Holy Spirit? It's like this complicated math.
Right. Wait a second.
And Jesus has to die, right? And there's terrible grief about that to everyone else who doesn't understand what it is that's happening.
Right.
But he's really dying, just like you were talking about. It's the dyadic thing that's dying so that he can shift into being the one consciously. He was aware that he was the one prior to that.
Right. And that's what was so, like, it's what fucked up everything around him, you know?
Yeah, right. But so just, if you got, can we do a experiential? So this idea of relationship, that's the word I tend to use as far as one of the big categories here, this dyadic thing, right? What is relationship? The way you put it a minute ago, that the human condition is this dyadic thing, right? And it causes us all this pain because we have this deep yearning for a monad. So we feel separate. We feel separate. And that, if you go back to the Christian thing, Adam was just fine, right? Until Eve came along.
Right.
Right? And the idea there is not about male, female. That's not the point I'm making.
So the narrator tells us, right?
The issue is two instead of one. And again, it's this double-edged thing, because it's like, no, Adam was alone, and now he's not alone. Now there's two. So now there can be relationship. And it's like, okay, but that's a different thing than the oneness thing. Mm. There's a certain loss of awareness as the one. So one of the hallmarks of awakening in Buddhism, in Christian mysticism, in all kinds of esoteric traditions, what do you have to face? Well, one of the things that you have to face is absolute aloneness, right? We all hit that every day, several times a day. It tries to creep in, and we fend it off. Mm. We fend it off. Again, it's just another part of that fits in. That aloneness is facing. That aloneness is one of the steps journey towards awakening or realization. Okay, but so as far as an experiential, this idea of relationship and this idea of what happens, another aspect of a third, and now I'm not talking about a third person coming in. I'm talking about if you have true one-to-one relationship, so not a dyad becoming a monad, but if you actually allow a dyad and allow each part of the dyad to be a one, then a third thing shows up, and that third thing is presence, which I think in Christianity is the Holy Spirit. And whatever, take or leave the Christian thing.
Terms are helpful. I think explaining as many terms as possible is good.
Okay. We have this experience with ourselves. So just notice, and I'm just going to, based on me doing certain stuff with my attention, I'm going to help you have a certain experience. Okay, so if you bring your attention to your heart chakra, and notice that, just like if you brought your attention to your foot, right? It's like, what does my foot feel like? Well, it's, But so if you bring it to your heart chakra, and it's like, okay, there's a certain experience there. But now bring your attention to the place in your mind that you're looking at your heart chakra with. Yep. And you feel how your eyes just went blank when you did that. Mm-hmm. You sense that? It's like, well, how come your eyes are blank? Now bring your attention to both your heart chakra and to the place that you were looking at your heart chakra from. And let those two things relate to each other. Let the energies go both ways. And you feel how there's presence showing up. And your eyes now have more presence than they did a minute ago. There's a third thing showing up. Do you sense that?
Yeah, I think what I've sensed about it is just the way the world looks has shifted between those three things.
But what's the third thing?
I don't know.
But doesn't it seem to be, quote unquote, you? Isn't the third thing your actual presence?
Yeah, it's just like my eyes felt different. And I think that's how I would describe that personal presence, or that me, or that you, or that third thing.
Like, I feel like I'm seeing the ghost in the machine right now. You feel that?
Yeah.
Like you're actually in touch with the ghost in the machine. Do you get what I mean by that?
I do, because so it's like with just the fourth, we've talked about how it goes from 3D back to 2D in the fourth, and that.
Meaning in the fourth dimension.
Yeah. So like just looking at from the fourth chakra, could get that. Looking at the thing, looking at it, it was blank, like you said. And then looking at them together, it was like it's like my eyes had feelings.
Yes. And does it match that I'm saying that that's an experience of presence? That it's not a thing, it's a being?
Mm-hmm.
But you have to have all three.
But it's not like, it's not like channeling, though. It's not like...
No, because like channeling would be bringing an other in, right?
Right.
Whereas this is kind of the opposite of channeling.
Right.
It's the opposite of possession.
Indwelling, or...
Yes, the indwelling spirit is being made manifest. And you feel how, to the ego identity, it's spooky.
Mm-hmm. I mean, there's like, part of it's because I've been staring at a screen for so long, but there's just some visual shakiness to it. Part of me wants to like take off.
Wants to get away from this experience.
Yeah, or like, shoot up into something else. All of a sudden you started to seem farther and farther and farther away.
And do you feel how, okay, if we're done recording and now you're going to walk in the other room and you're going to suddenly hide this?
Yeah.
Strange. Like, it's like, why?
Yeah.
And one way to describe why is because you're being a one more than usual right now. You're going to think, I got to go back into the two. I got to go back into a dyad. I can't. It's an either or. If I show up as a one, to the extent I show up as a one, there's going to be less connection with. There's a certain truth to that, but there's it at the same time.
But it's like an aware 3-in-1. Like, this is a different deal. Like, I feel like the dynamic you're talking about definitely have multiple challenges around that. This feels like a different kind of exposure.
So just like a switch, if you turn the light switch to where the contact points come apart, the light bulb goes out. When you flip the switch and the contact points come together, you have a circuit and the light bulb comes on. When you let the place you're looking at and the place you're looking from come together, the light bulb goes on. Presence shows up. It requires both. And then quantum physics, right, is saying the same thing, that an occurrence, a manifestation, requires a relationship. It's interactions that create where you get state shifts, for example, from a quantum. Mm-hmm. So this idea of relationship and of when two can really each be two and not simply try to make two into one. We've said it already, but it's like if I'm over here and I'm wanting oneness, so then I'm trying to connect with you, and it's like, oh shit, there's Jeff. There's this experience of two-ness. How do we make this a oneness? And it's like, well, easy. I just subsume Jeff into my sense of self, right? I narcissistically include him. I control him. I somehow try to get more and more of Jeff's just, a part of my magnificent oneness. Your system, to the extent that you're codependent, you're going to be on board with that.
Right.
To the extent that you're not, you're going to fight it. To the extent that you're narcissistic, you're going to be trying to do that to me. But so two trying to become one by negating the other or merging and having it be some homogenous thing is different than I'll be a separate individual one and you be a separate individual one, and we will interact, and then this miracle happens, which is that a third thing shows up, which is contact, which is connection, which is presence, which is this thing. And then if you really experience that in a awake way, it's, oh my God, that's the one. Mm-hmm. We are both one, not because we negated each other's separateness, but because we allowed it. We get in touch with the oneness that's actually deeper and more primary than the two-ness. It's not that the two aren't coming together and then creating a one. It's that it's revealing the underlying one, which is the dialectic thing, that you take the two seemingly opposing things, and if it's a dialectic, it's that the previous primary state was one.
Right.
The two-ness was actually a distortion.
A very real distortion.
Right.
I mean, that's everything. That's it. It helped that you pointed out that like the zooming out and you getting farther away was like a fear response. That helped a lot. part of my pattern with altered states.
I mean, that's a profound thing. People that are having spiritual awakenings start to feel such a frightening aloneness. Just feels like they're literally being pulled out of inclusion in the world.
And it's like, it doesn't even matter what the context is. Like the context for that was, you're like, okay, I'm just going to like help show you this thing that like I've already established is valid and real. And we're just going to experience it. And then it's like, so that's the context for the experience. And I have the experience. And then it's like, oh shit, I'm going to run away. Like, you know, like,
Yeah.
this thing that Lance said that like he knows and sees, I'm going to, and now I'm seeing as true and real. Now I'm alone. It's like, I just forget immediately what the context was.
Yeah, it's like, here's these yellow tinted glasses. When you put them on, everything's going to look kind of yellow. Then you put them on and you're like, oh my God, everything's yellow.
Exactly.
I was actually helping you take the glasses off.
Right. I get it. There's something I was thinking about. One, just thanks. That was pretty, what I'm kind of like going through right now is kind of a really, just appreciated that. I feel like I've just been feeling these like, these grief things. And like this, the context of that makes a lot of sense. And then this, you talking about how the dimension approach works really was pretty amazing to hear in the context of all that. And then to experience like what a triad is. Pretty remarkable series of things to experience and talk through, just for me personally. So thanks for going through all that.
Yeah, you're welcome.
I was thinking about like in the work that you do, we're talking about, you know, conscious attention. We're talking about when you bring conscious attention to an issue with someone, and we're talking about it's coming from the same place. Both of you are bringing your conscious attention to it in that moment. That when you explain things, the hurdle that like I know you feel in like talking about it is that the part of you that needs to explain something is trying to explain it to the part of them that already knows it.
Yes.
And then there's so many distortions in between those two things.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons it does come back to, and I, you know, I usually say this jokingly, but there's truth to it, where it's just shut up and accept the transmission. Because the part of you that's talking, the part of you that's asking questions, the part of you that's trying to get it isn't the part I'm talking to.
Right. You're trying to just show the dynamics of that light switch.
Yeah.
And it's like, this is the pre-existing state of this. And you're just trying to like imbue that, transmit that, and be like, this is how it is. And then sometimes people apparently tell you that you're being aggressive.
Right.
There's still you there, right? There's still, Lance is still there too, right?
Right.
Like it's not either or.
Exactly.
The ego, I just imagine that it's still a constant, hopefully not as constant, but still a constant like recognition of the ego trying to subsume that identity. And we've talked about that a lot in the context of where all this can go wrong.
And that thing where, like, if you have a dog, at least to a certain degree, you understand that you're not going to make your dog into a human. You might tame your dog, you might teach your dog tricks, you might get more and more in sync with your dog.
Yeah.
You know, you develop this relationship, and that's a beautiful, wonderful thing. But also, people project all kinds of human qualities onto their dog, right? But we do this with our ego mind. It's like I'll use the term a lot with clients. There's like a certain part of our system where it's like that thing's just a gorilla, like that part of your system that's just a gorilla. We try to make the gorilla into
give it a hat,
personality, right? Exactly. Yeah, we try to dress it up and make it. And not only is that a mistake to try to make the gorilla into a human, but we either try to kill the gorilla or we try to fix the gorilla or change the gorilla into a like awakened spiritual self or something. And it's like, no, the gorilla part's a gorilla, just like the brainstem. It's like you're just a lizard. From that part of your system, you're a reptile. And don't try to change that part into something other than it being a reptile.
Right.
Let the gorilla be a gorilla. let the ego human with all its foibles be an ego and awaken to the soul and have them be in relationship to each other.
Right.
And understand that indeed there is a hierarchy to that.
That's good. Yeah. Nice.
Which is different than collapsing it all into one level and because you're gonna get real frustrated trying to turn your gorilla into a human because the gorilla is not going for it.
Right.
You have a thought that's from the reptilian brain, and then you go, "Oh my God, the human in me is a reptile." It's like, no, you're both.
The fact that you notice that.
In the same way that if you have a spiritual experience and then you go, "My ego is God," it's like, no, you had a God experience. Or you had a soul experience, or you had so in the same way that, okay, just because you had a gorilla experience doesn't mean your human is really a gorilla. If you had a awakened soul experience or something like that, it doesn't mean your ego is that.
Right.
Your ego is still just an ego. It goes both ways, up and down.
Yeah.
We can conflate either direction.
I was just like thinking, I wish you could take this understanding or this container or this worldview and like transplant it 10 years ago and then not go through everything I went through.
Yeah.
I know it doesn't work that way. And like, I'm appreciative for the fact that it's led me to this kind of understanding, but you're just talking about conflating up and down. And I mean, that's just what was going on for a hot minute.
Yeah, first I went into your, child family experience. Now I'm going into your.
Yeah. This would be the preamble to me saying what actually happened.
Yeah, exactly.
And we can do that next week.
Don't tease the listeners here. You've done that enough.
No. I mean, let's just do. I think we were talking about it the other day. I think we should. I had another kind of insight into my own kind of personal journey, and I think I realized that I'm a bit of an evangelist at heart, despite my misgivings for the evangelists I've known in my life. So it's just it feels good.
And are there going to be a bunch of hallelujahs?
We'll see. I've never been much of a hand raiser, but I've just been quietly wanting to convince people of things. If you want to learn more about the Dimension Approach, please visit dimensionapproach.com.